We are democratizing AI over the last 10 or 10 plus years. Super, very, very solid team over the years. They've been pursuing with a customer obsession and a maker culture. Right? So today will be a demonstration of some of that. We have 10% of the world's top Kaggle Grandmasters, 3 out of the 5 ranks, and most of the former number ones as well, call H2O home. So we're incredibly privileged to bring that innovation to the fore. As you probably know, democratizing AGI has become a new theme, and we'll talk a little bit of that. We believe that like music, math is a generational wealth that the human species has built, and same way AGI and AI, like math, will belong to the open source and to the community. It should belong to every one of us. Open source is about freedom, and not just free. We saw some incredible contributions to open source this morning, and over the last year, if anything, open source and small models have taken the force detour. Open source also defends of your communities with code. And code, as you all know, has been taken over by AI. So with that, I want to leave one last slide here for why LLMs are so interesting today. And data scientists, we are absolutely obsessed with data, right? But business units, they're 80% data. Hopefully, by the time we get to the boards and grandparents, we are mostly focused on storytelling. So let me tell the story of our latest offering. With that, so on this phone, I have a small language model. So let's, how should an AI entrepreneur, which probably a lot of us in the audience, use generative AI to build communities? And by the way, building communities is, BC is before COVID, and we realized the power of communities then. Let me go completely offline on this one, and let's issue this query. I know that the world is filled with a lot of demos, but this model is entirely running on the cell phone, right? So you are essentially owning this LLM. It's an open source H2O Danube model. It has about 4 trillion tokens for the smaller model and 6 trillion tokens for the larger model. And the idea is that democratizing AI means it has to be faster, cheaper, easier, and personal, yours. So over time, this model will evolve, could be evolved, and we have tools, LLM studios, to continue to fine-tune on your data, on protected data, and so continuously you can improve it. This is coming soon to you on a Dell laptop or a Samsung TV, and I think clearly it's been used for a lot of interesting use cases, right? So guardrails, small LLMs. With that, of course, you have open source, and we are part of the greater community of community builders. And I want to open up to how we think that these products will be used. And I think the previous speakers, some of them did mention, you're going to use not one LLM, but a lot of LLMs, right? So we'll take one of these, I like this collection, Confident Lovelace collection. And here's a chat. Again, demos, right? By the way, one of the new interesting theme that I've seen over the last couple of quarters is people talk about TTFD, time to first demo, right? But you need to get to production, from pilots to production. That's kind of the journey we are really excited about. So this particular use case is essentially trying to run a query, list 10 ways H2O AI is partnering with. It's taking one of our public data here, a public document, earnings calls, again, something that you've seen before, investor documents. So obviously, we support a lot of different LLMs, and more importantly, we let you pick different generation approaches, right? Sort of RAG, high drag. People have seen most of these in the passing, but also notice a small knob here. You have a LLM that routes your LLM, right? Sort of so a small agentic architecture that can essentially help you kind of figure out what's the cost you're willing to bear per query, or how much are you willing to wait for accuracies, latency. So basically allow you to kind of orchestrate a whole host of LLMs, open source, closed source, proprietary, bring the best LLM to solve the problem you have, right? So again, so query will launch, and again, all the typical semantic chunking, all the various problems many of us face in the community. We try to solve those problems. You can also bring vision models up to start helping prompt templates, right? So people have talked about prompt templates, and in general, creating more and more ways to kind of look at the references. Here's the model hub, if you will, that you have. You can, these are the ones installed. Again, all our software, like the one you saw, running on the phone, runs air-gapped in your environment, in your virtual private cloud, on all the 3 clouds, right? And you can actually kind of start building your own test frameworks from here, right? How do these models like compare from cost, accuracy to kind of latencies, right? So you kind of get a very good idea how to build. I think there was an amazing talk from Agus Sujanto yesterday about how do you measure these LLMs, how to pick the right ones for you, what kind of techniques to use. So here's a kind of Eval Studio that's actually something that helps you build these kind of various tests, but from tests to actually running them against different problems, right? So we have a series of evals, right? Again, eval first design is going to be kind of how you design. A test first design yields to eval first design, right? So you have a whole bunch of catalogs of tests, right? How does a teller behave? How does somebody use kind of different content, right? And so these, I mean, literally plugging a real multi-choice or a question answer type or a token presence model back into, eval back into your Eval Studio. So these are kind of the, I would say, still very kind of simple ways you can bring a lot of testing into your, because getting accuracy is just as important, right? For your models. So that's Eval Studio. You've seen some variations of these before. Now I'm going to talk about how customers are actually using these LLMs, right? So they are taking this and building applications on top. So a classic example is how you look at complaints, right? Customer support is important, but customer complaints, some of our banking customers need to respond to these complaints within the next kind of 10 days, right? So regulatory. So being able to resolve those is actually super important for them. Being able to kind of look for topics in them that are, and these are no particular, these are all public data, so I'm going to just pick one of these. But basically trying to look at topics as they're emerging so that you can actually resolve from your other places where to bring new things. So that's another, again, summarization, presentation, machine learning meets generative AI. I think that's a very, very sweet spot for most of our customers. Here's another use case that our customers have used in AI for Good, trying to predict how to predict which telephone pole is going to get hit by a hurricane, how to plot it. Again, this got a lot of press recently because you can build a hurricane predicting model on your laptop, no longer on supercomputers. Machine learning and AI have come of age on actually being able to do that prediction. Other simple use cases on this one is procurement. We've seen customers use this for procurement. I think it's probably somewhere here. So you can actually start comparing docs, standard contracts, right? So that you can essentially start looking for trends on and red lines, essentially, right? Across the whole across the whole gamut of problems. So these are kind of like early like contracts, boring stuff getting picked up. So when boring stuff gets picked up, it actually leaves some creative stuff for us. So far, we have actually seen the counter, right? Boring stuff hasn't been picked up by AI, generative AI yet. And where we are seeing the real aha for that is coming from one of the use cases we just saw, content marketing or personalized marketing. One of our customers, large beverage company, they ended up picking up 6% market share over their competitor in 1 year because they used personalized marketing. Very simple use case, automatic machine learning, driving building the prompts for a generative AI, right? So it's a very, very, I mean, we all know Shapley values or features that matter. I think from the features that matter, they're able to extract kind of the real reasons how to generate the prompt, so you get a very good kind of email message. Within 3 messages, they're able to get someone to go buy a drink, right? That kind of really kind of personalized marketing. I think where we are seeing a lot of action for us is people trying to use their own data, private, protected data, which is the next set of tokens. We use 6 trillion tokens ourselves, but what's happened is that the large, that's the tip of the iceberg, the web data, the home, your data, your enterprise data, your personal data is where the next alpha exists in the space. And we build tools for that, Label Genie, LLM Data Studio, LLM Studio, Prompt Studios that can have you build your own really high-end modeling frameworks and then essentially fine-tune your models for your own GPT at your own, in your own local environments. So that, of course, connecting it back to the predictive and generative. We obviously want to raise a forest, not just a tree. So over the years, open source has brought us that kind of real appreciation for building communities. And I think if there was one large force that kind of paused the community's our progress was COVID. It brought us all together, and we thank our community, many of them in the audience, earliest embracers of AI and of our culture. Here's an ode to them. We have been on this journey to dream, and that dream is over the years taken a lot of real traction. I think music is. In thanking the community, today we announced our first AI 100 folks who essentially brought kind of practice. There's unsung, many of them unsung heroes. We saw a speaker earlier, TIAA, in the audience. We recognize them. We recognize people using AI. Some of them very dear kind of practitioners I've watched from the earliest days. Some of the nonprofits fighting for endangered species. Still, some others deploying it in service of democratizing credit, democratizing health, and in public service as well. So please check that out. We'll be celebrating and congratulating most of their work over the course of the next few months. So super excited to kind of reveal that winners list today. So it's a privilege to be a partner in their journey to some of them, but many we have admired from the distance. Every nation will need to be an AI nation, and I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? So we're just beginning to enter that stage where democratizing AI is going to lead to democratizing AGI. Some of you know that GPT was, someone has tried to get GPT trademarked. We crushed that with open source, right? So as you probably know. But really, the real power of AI, beyond democratizing it for everyone, is for good. Some of our colleagues have been working on these problems. Like we have the census of most of the endangered species using user-generated photos with a nonprofit called Wild Me. We worked with helping with the pandemic supply chain. H2O is a small startup, but we managed to import thousands of concentrators and ship to 200 hospitals during COVID. There was a very fulfilling project. Wildfires, bushfires. We run contests, but our Kaggle Grandmasters are typically working on Kaggle to continuously improve the edge, right? Sort of whether to in the Vesuvius problem or in the problem of like detecting, making LLMs, small LLMs stretch more get more from smaller LLMs. Predicting hurricanes, we looked at democratizing health, and health equity remains a very, very unsung story. Mental health is another problem. We're working with a few hospitals on trying to build better ways to assist and understand the problem. Democratizing health, I started the company because my mom had breast cancer and wanted to fight cancer with AI. And I think we are very close to bringing AI to CRISPR or synthetic bio startups, AI for longevity, and of course, security. If you think about longevity, one of the claims, one of the predictions we have is if you live to 2032, your health span is going to be almost close to 140 years. There are a lot of startups that are pursuing that. Living forever is probably a little too much of a stretch, but the biggest wins in AI is knowing that many of us will have point-to-point relationships for decades because health span is going to improve. And I think we hope we can co-create with the community in making that dream possible. Testing LLMs, hallucinations remain still a big problem for LLMs. At the booth, we are probably presenting Eval Studio, but also Agus and others have been building how to bring model risk management kind of rigor to basically LLMs. In LLMs, you're basically having a much bigger surface area. So you really cannot guarantee conceptual soundness, but you can absolutely guarantee expose weakness. So NIST, different standards, NIST SR 11.7 for banking. We're beginning to work with public sector and learning how public servants are truly at a few years disadvantage. There's a ton of, I would call hype in the space, but there's a lot of big wins. Some of our customers have unlocked close to a couple of $1 billion, $2.5 billion in AI value. So using predictive AI, but they're not afraid of using generative AI and predictive AI together. I think that's probably the key piece you can take from this talk, is basically being not every solution to a problem is generative. So use your prior, you have attended, many of you attended AI4. How many of you are attending AI4 for the first time? Wow, that's amazing. I remember the first time an AI4 was done, and we used to run H2O World conferences because of our open source. And I think it's amazing to see how much transformation that has happened in the last couple of years. One other innovation that the team has put together is how do you read documents? How do you perceive the differences in the documents? Our approach to LLM is we came from document AI to large language models, classic NLP route, right? And I think learning how you can read, perceive is going to change, not just by looking at how the documents were originally presented, but how they are differing. And I think the difference engine is going to be how we're going to see the future and actually learning how the patterns are changing. So Gen AI becomes behind the scenes. Labeling also, 10-shot learning with LLMs has produced very good labeling for our document AI. I want to also kind of touch on data. Data is a Sanskrit word, it means data, which is to give. Right? Give yourself to that purpose. AI is going to create it's going to usher abundance of time, space, matter, and energy. Right? So if there's so much outer space and inner space, like exploration of space, as well as your own thinking. We know so little about how our mind works, and even today, many of our veterans put their lives on the line and then have mental need support on the mental health. I think we are really privileged to be working with some of the government agencies these days to actually make that work better. Abundance of time, 1 million seconds is about 11 days. 1 billion seconds is 37 years, right? So if you think about how many thoughts a human can have in a lifetime, 2 words per second, roughly 1 billion thoughts. So every one of you are a billionaire in thinking. So I think I would say now with AI, you can actually produce close to 1 billion prompts. So with that prompts, you have on your fingertips more power than most people on the planet. So I would say this is kind of the time to kind of essentially lean in and embrace. Long time ago, the biggest problems of the world were virus, wars, and superstitions. Unfortunately, we have not changed from that place, and we would love to make a difference. AI can make a difference, and we, with AI, can make that difference. And we are busy being born or busy dying. And I would say, as typically I would end, this will be fun. Incredibly grateful for AI4 for having us here. And I typically end with most of these with a selfie. So I would love to get a selfie with the audience here.